Recently, I think I defeated Bato somewhere.
We are live now.
Okay, now we are live. Maybe we can start. You're ready with the video, right?
Yeah, maybe I'll just introduce. So we now have a short talk by Professor Raj Reddy, Turing Award winner, and has served on the faculty of CMU and Stanford for the last 50 years, and was also the chair of the Governing Council of IIIT Hyderabad, and has played a pivotal role in early discussions with Ratan Tata for setting up a center such as the Kohli Center for Intelligent Systems. Professor Reddy has been closely associated with the history of chess programs, starting from early 60s until the advent of deep thought and deep blue in the late 90s. Here's this video clip on the same. Thank you.
Good evening. It's my pleasure to join this panel with Grandmaster Anandan. I'm sorry that I'm not able to be there in person. However, I've had a unique opportunity to have a ringside seat on the computer chess problem. I started at Stanford in 1963. Just before that, a few years before that, Newell and Simon did a Newell, Shaw and Simon chess program. At that time, they were programming it on a mainframe of that day, which had only like 4K bytes of memories. And then after 63, nothing much happened in computer chess, except we had a chess grandmaster called Hans Berliner, who was joined as a PhD student, who was spending time to build a full-fledged chess-playing machine. Alan Newell said it would be interesting to see what a brute force chess program can do given today's computing power. So what he did was, what Gilogli did was to build what we call a technology-based chess program, which is simply do a brute force search, look at everything and go down some number of levels. Obviously, given the memory capacity and other things and speed, they were only able to go 6 plies deep or 4 plies deep or something. And I encouraged him to set up a chess, a prize for computers achieving a status like beating the world champion chess grandmaster, reigning world champion in chess, and he did, and we set up a Carnegie Mellon announced the chess $100,000 prize called the Fredkin Prize. In 1997, a program called Deep Blue that was built by a students' team that went from CMU to IBM built a program called Deep Blue, which beat the Kasparov, who is the reigning champion at that time, and so we actually gave out the Fredkin Prize to the 3 people that created the program. And on the top photograph, you can see there has been a history of 30 years of programs, computer chess playing programs, which they would play each other annually, and in the annual there would be a winner. This is Richard Greenblatt from MIT. He built the first program to get to the expert level. To me, basically, his name is Larry Atkin and Joe Condon, 2 people from Northwestern built a program because they had access to a supercomputer. This is Ken Thompson. Ken Thompson is famous for building the Unix operating system, and he got a Turing Award for that. But here, in addition to that, he was at Bell Labs. He actually built a program called Bell, BELLE, and that also became like a master's level slightly higher than a master's level program. And those are the two programs that did the thing. There are two programs at CMU which achieved the rating of Grandmaster. One was built by Hans Berliner and his student, and the other one was built by C.B. Su, Thomas Anantharaman, and Murray Campbell. So at that time, IBM came and hired the three key people of CMU team that built the Grandmaster thing. He was part of the Deep Thought team, and so he was honored as part of the original team that built the Deep Thought, which led to the Deep Blue team here. So that is the history of the world champion chess machines. We were happy that we had the opportunity to honor all of them.
So I think we can start now. So we welcome profoundly five-time world champion and also a world junior champion in his teams, Grandmaster Viswanathan Anand, for the moderated session on AI in chess from a world champion standpoint. The session is moderated by International Master Sai Krishna, who after finishing his honors in ECE from IIIT, completed his master's at MILA, the University of Montreal, with flying colors, publishing in top forums such as NeurIPS. Anand single-handedly changed the face of chess and thought processes associated with professional chess in India. He won the World Junior Crown in 1987 and soon after obtained his third GM norm to complete the requirements of becoming a Grandmaster in 1988. Within a year, Dibyendu Barua too became a Grandmaster and the trend had positively started. Today, the country has close to 50 Grandmasters. Anand quickly established himself amongst the highest echelons by easily overcoming the then GMs of the days in many of those matches. These include Jonathan Spielman, Jan Timman, Michael Adams, Ivan Chuk, Arthur Yusupov, and the dangerous Yugoslavian Ljubomir Ljubojevic. He had a complete stranglehold over one of the 2Ks, Anatoly Karpov, and his matches with the biggest man, Kasparov, was also a treat to watch. Anand won his first World Cup by demolishing Alexei Shirov in 2000 and became the undisputed world champion in 2007 in a round-robin tournament. Anand's magnum opus, of course, is in the summit clash with Vladimir Kramnik at Bonn in 2008, where Kramnik was completely out-prepared and outplayed. For many of his fans, a thoroughly bemused Kramnik spending a minute for the opening move in the last game of the clash leaves many lasting impressions. Chess commentary, unlike cricket, can be very mysterious and hair-raising even for the uninitiated. It's an experience to see the expert predicts various possible trajectories of moves, and the player either seems to go based on those predictions or deviates, adding his own novelty, something that Sai Krishna is going to engage with Vishy today. I recall a couple of thrilling moments in the summit clash with Topalov in 2010 from the fourth game, where Anand makes a piece sacrifice for better position and ending. If I'm not wrong, this game was also awarded a novelty prize by FIDE in 2010. I vaguely remember. From Susan Polgar's commentary after Topalov plays f6 with black on move number 24. And now this is what Polgar has to say. Anand has to be careful here. He is down a piece. If he cannot find the optimal continuation, he would then be in trouble. I think 25 e5 is the strongest option here, but it is not an easy move to find. But if he finds it, he has excellent chances to win this game. And the heart goes tut-tut for all the fans. It's like really what's going to happen. And 25 e5, Anand has found the knockout punch. This game clearly demonstrates Anand's ability to calculate, to find 23 knight cuts of h6, followed by the critical e5 move is not easy, especially when the pressure is on during the World Championship. Certainly, chess programs are not subject to mind games. They do not experience any of the emotions which sentient beings experience. I believe these are some aspects Sai Krishna would cover in his moderated discussion as I leave the floor open. Yeah, thank you, Sai. Please go ahead. Thanks, Anand.
Thank you for joining us, Anand. So I think we'll briefly discuss your experiences with chess engines and how you would use them in your opening preparation or in general training, and then broad impacts of AI in chess, and then we'll leave it open for audience questions.
Sure.
So what was your first encounter with the chess engine, and how did it evolve over years?
I started working with computers in just a few months after becoming World Junior Champion. So the first time I met someone who had the database software that apparently went that you used, but it was totally new in those days. My first encounter with chess engines was about 2 or 3 years later.
Mhm.
And, a smile comes to our head because it could go a couple of ply at most. It was ridiculously weak. But even then, it had this tendency to, well, first of all, suggest a lot of moves that we rejected more or less on the spot. And every 10th move or so would actually turn out to be correct, because there would be one little tactical detail that we humans left out, but computers don't. And I had also had a chance to play against a Bell that Ken Thompson had from his Bell Labs. The challenge was to win with a queen against a rook. So the computer would defend with a rook, and you had the king and queen, and you had to win that. Now, this is a theoretical win, and most of us thought it was trivial, but it turned out to be incredibly difficult if you don't know the way. For the viewers, I would summarize it as going for a walk in your park and getting lost, in your neighborhood park, and getting lost again and again and again because the computer just defends perfectly. And once you understand the key idea, and nowadays, by the way, most players are much better at finishing it because we have gone through that phase of being embarrassed and we all sat and studied it. But those were the early experiences. And then computers slowly started getting stronger and stronger. But till 94, I mean, in 97, exactly one month before the Deep Blue Kasparov match, I beat 6 computers while giving a simultaneous display. So it gives you and these were, I mean, there were still Pentiums and, decent hardware. But by 98, you got tired of playing against them because you would outplay them totally. Then at the last minute, you'd make some silly slip up. It was just frustrating and you decided not to bother. And then very quickly, within a year or two, we realized we couldn't play against them because the problem was humans are constantly regrouping, but computers at that point were doubling in speed every 18 years, Moore's law and all that. So even if we pulled ourselves together, applied a little more discipline, it didn't matter because in the meantime, they had moved on quite far. And after, I would say 99, 2000, I haven't played a game against my computer. It's just been no point. Mm-hmm. And that is pretty much the story of it. I mean, I'll go ahead and finish the answer. That way I'll probably save you a couple of questions later. And so till about 2004, the brute force engines continued. I think any growth was really hardware driven. There was nothing new and interesting, but the hardware revolution carried them along. Then in 2006, we first saw Ripka. And then there were a couple of innovative engines that came out that basically changed the way they went through the search tree. I won't try to explain to you guys what that is. But anyway, that's by refining their search, they managed to get very, very powerful. So this was not hardware driven. And then, of course, for the last few years, we have AI, neural networks playing chess, and that has been a revolution. I mean, long before we gave up waiting for a revolution, long after, one arrived, and that is the current status.
So we all know about this famous match against Deep Blue by Kasparov, but one of the comments at that time was that it used like a lot of hardware, it used a lot of compute at that time. But then later, after a year or so, you played against a Rebel, which seemed to use a lesser compute, and I think it gave you a tough fight. So what are your thoughts on Rebel and its comparison with Deep Blue?
Yes, at that point, it didn't feel like the result was decisive. Certainly, if you have a 1-point win and you just think, well, we could have another match next year, and both sides try harder, and let's see what happens. But of course, for IBM, for marketing purposes, had to pretend that it was a milestone that was achieved and move on very quickly. So they did that, and then we never got to see another match. And then, like I said, within 2-3 years, it became obvious that there was no point in staging such a match. I mean, there were still 1 or 2 matches that were staged, but they were a little bit ridiculous. They were the opening book of the computer was given to the player, and the sort of handicapping had already started. By now, the handicapping has gotten quite extreme, that you can actually remove a pawn and I don't think you can remove a rook yet, but you can remove a pawn, and humans don't win. They make a draw sometimes, but they don't win anymore. So it it became irrelevant very fast. That's all.
So engines have become very stronger, and now they play at a superhuman level. But at some points, grandmasters trust their own judgments while preparing openings and so on. They just don't consider its recommendations. So do you think this trust gap still exists, and how do we bridge that?
Well, for a long time after, computers would consistently win the games against us, we could still come up with interesting suggestions which would not be suggested by the computer, because for some obscure reason it wouldn't suggest it. We could still come up with ideas that it hadn't found, because we think with imagination and creativity, and so we're able to guess much better. And so for a while, this was uneasy coexistence. We would suggest a move and then use the computer to clean it up, to refine it and to iron out all the kinks. But by 2006 and, Ripka and all these things, then they started to catch up in that realm as well. And after that, I would say the stage, and we are still in it, is that the computer not only makes the tactical suggestions, it also makes the positional ones. It is stronger in both because it is calculating so far ahead. But the human growth, or the thing, is to ask all the questions. So a computer saying something is true can hide 100 other questions that are almost correct, but it's only when you ask the question, force the computer to answer that question, and really try to understand the answer, and then you'll have more questions, and you feed the question back, and then you get another answer. And then at some point, you'll see something that at a human level makes sense for the whole thing. And you think, so this is the move that explains why 7 moves ago I had to play this instead of that. And right now, that's the stage we're in. We no longer have any suggestions to give, but asking questions intelligently is how you improve your insight. And I think that's the key right now.
So I think, as you mentioned, we need to ask a lot of questions to get an accurate answer of what it actually thinks. Do you see this improving at any point in the future? Like instead of just giving out a bunch of variations or just position evaluations, do you see engines actually explaining its thought behind some particular moves or evaluations?
No, in a sense, the computer just plays better than us. It's like saying that, I mean, are humans ever going to run as fast as a car? No, that ship has sailed. But essentially, if you used to wander around a town and try to understand how the street layout, and then you try to understand what's the quick way to get somewhere, what's the most efficient way to get somewhere, and that kind of discovery. And now we have come to the stage where we realize there's no point in me doing this. Let me use the car, but then let me stop at every place and try to understand the city. And that's kind of the parallel with chess. There is the computer plays better no matter what we do. But we can improve a lot by asking these questions and using the computer to be very productive at finding answers. So I can ask, if I can go to 100 places in the city and find out, oh, this is where the doctor lives, this is where this shop is, oh, this is a nice little shop, it's not mentioned, and things like that. Then the chess parallel is, because the answers come so quickly, you're able to ask 500 questions a day. And if you ask them intelligently and you can organize the answers you got, then you can grow as a chess player. Are we ever going to catch up with them? No, of course not.
I see. Did you get to play around with AlphaZero or observe some of its games?
Yeah, well, I've watched its games, and of course, I use Leela and Fat Fritz and all these things that are based on the same kind of idea: neural nets, computers that essentially learn from their own games and so on. And I analyze a lot with them, because nowadays what happens is even in positions which are dull or drawn, computers can be very helpful to find some life, some way of continuing. And this is where modern chess development is stuck. It's on a knife edge, it seems, between being dead drawn and having a little bit of life that you can squeeze a bit more and go on. Besides that, of course, all the rules that we probably you as well grew up with: put your pieces in the center, don't move any piece more than once, develop this, develop that, follow this plan, minority attack, whatever, what have you. It turns out all these rules are reasonable approximations, but nothing more. They're not rules anymore. And the computer throws up a million exceptions. And that's a kind of learning growth as well. You find out it's frustrating because constantly you're being told that everything you learned in your childhood is inaccurate, if not wrong. But you keep at it and you try to make sense of it all.
So we have like humans who came into the world without any prior knowledge of chess, and similarly machines like AlphaZero or Leela Zero also kind of started without any prior knowledge of chess. But at the end of the training process, the game styles are kind of completely different. The way they think are completely different. For example, you have a special way of pruning a lot of variations, which these engines don't necessarily have. So why do you think that difference came out, and can we bridge this gap? Or are there any inspirations for to design AI systems that learn more like a human brain?
I don't see why you would bother. Why do we at the moment, the greatest learning for us can be simply having an AI system and then finding out what it is missing, and that gives us a lot of insights. I think, of course, inevitably, given the fact that countries are rivals and often military rivals, that this work will not stop at finding something which can be autonomous. And I think it doesn't matter whether we find it frightening or not. This competition alone will drive it. But at the moment, it's much more interesting to see what something without any bias is able to show us is more fascinating than learning. I mean, once you train it to have its own biases, then what do you get? For me, it's much more interesting having something there that is able to look at every problem without any bias, any prior opinion, prior knowledge, and throw out something interesting. But I think we have wandered into the realm of philosophy here. So maybe why we would bother at all. In chess, it kind of, it would be amazing if a computer is able to, react to changing circumstances very far. But the point is, a computer is already calculating so fast in terms of sheer number of positions that it's hard for us to tell the difference. But chess is a very, it's a very narrow game. The rules are extremely stable and fixed, and all the information is on the table. Clearly, from that to more unpredictable environments is where the growth will inevitably occur. But I think it'll be similar because they will just keep on they'll do simulations at home. Essentially, what these computers did was to play 40, 50 million games against themselves. Like that, before an AI system is able to walk around a building, they'll make it walk around that building in a simulation 100 million times, and then it'll do it much better, and so on. I assume that's how it'll go there as well. But I'm not going to tell you guys how to proceed. That's clearly wrong.
So do we still have the notion of this research in a human brain? Like, we usually associate the chess variations with the research, but is that how humans calculate, or do you calculate at some more abstract level of thinking of ideas and strategies?
Well, humans often try to organize their thinking, and they try to follow some rules and some structure. But I don't think there was ever a time when we thought we were thinking logic. I mean, where we could be accused of thinking logically. We think in an unpredictable way. Of course, you can become very, very good as a chess player, and not be able to explain to another person simple rules to play chess at your level, which means that at some level you play chess much better than you understand it, or that your understanding is intuitive in a way that you cannot explain to others. This is why you can have phenomenal players who cannot explain why a move pops into their head, but they say, I feel uncomfortable, that's that. And that's our brain. I think it'll continue to be that way. We are simply not going to change. And right now, it makes no sense for us to think logically, because in that area, we're even further behind. So, but it's never been like that. We can never reduce chess to a few simple rules and so on. I guess it's the same with language or many other 100 other things. Though watching chess playing computers, and then I often think about something I just did, and I think, well, why did I do that? And I don't know the answer. It's not only in chess. In all walks of life, you suddenly start to ask yourself the question. And you realize that so much of what we do is automatic or based on some prior experience, but that we cannot control this in any way.
So I think we have this notion of having two systems in the brain, system 1 and system 2. One of them is a fast thinking system which recognizes patterns and suggests some actions immediately, and the other is a kind of slow system that plans slowly. So do you kind of see this happen when you play chess? Like, do you initially get some immediate recommendations of some moves, and then you slowly process them? Do you think you have these two systems operating when you play chess?
Yes, definitely some idea will pop into my brain. But at the same time, I can sit and say, wait, let me count a few legal moves, or let me think about this, or let me calculate. And that is a very different process. One is very conscious, one is unconscious. But it's hit and miss as to which one is the correct one. quite often the answer that I calculate and I work and I consciously reject the intuitive one, it's 50-50. Sometimes I was right to do so, sometimes I'm wrong to do so.
So we have a couple of audience questions here. Anurag asks, given that human versus computer matches are out of the window now, do you think computer versus computer game would be a trend in the future, as in programmers competing with each other to design the best engine?
It could be, but for me, it's devoid of any interest. Even as a chess player, I will look at a computer game and only think, well, what's in it for me? But it misses all the drama, and I cannot see us sitting there and commentating on what this computer is doing and that computer is doing, because we don't understand what they're doing. As a sport, for me right now, it's inconceivable that we will ever sit around and watch two computers play chess and say, oh, wasn't that amazing? It's inconceivable right now, but that's not to say that I'm very good at predicting the future. Maybe that's what will happen. But I mean, a lot which seemed inconceivable to me 15 years back has happened. So it's the same thing. Maybe one day we will sit and we will be able to do commentary on these games much better. And then we'll see that they're actually very dramatic. But right now we understand so little of what they're doing that it's only when you have that sense of, oh, I could do just like them and I can do, and I understand why they did this and I wanted to do this, but he did that. And then at the end you see, oh, that is much better. And part of the struggle part of the joy of watching humans play each other is that is the imperfection. Very often, somebody sitting at home, for them it's obvious what the best players in the world are missing, and that is nice. That will never happen with computers. It's one-way traffic in that sense.
So moving on to like how we can use AI in opening preparation or training games and so on. Why isn't it like a very common practice that using engines to completely generate the openings and use it for your preparation? For example, you have opening trees or mega database and so on. Why can't we lay out an engine there and ask it to move from, let's say, right side and generate a move against every possible move?
The sheer volume of work. You can do this very easily. And we've been doing this for 10, 15 years at least. I mean, I remember around Mexico, I used to sit and sometimes if I wanted to see a question, I would put that, I would take a position, give it to the computer and ask it to play 50 games against itself overnight at a certain time control, I don't know, 10 minutes, 5 minutes per engine or whatever, something. And in the morning, I would see the statistics and think that's a reasonably good reflection of how the position should look like. But I will tell you that once you start this process, you realize that the volume of work is unimaginable. And even if you did that, you would never be able to remember it all anyway. So it continues to be a useful tool, but it has to be only one part of your toolkit.
So these days, many new players who are like new to the game of chess are quickly trying to learn it. And if they're using some quickly generated analysis from some chess app, which might not be very accurate because of limited compute that particular app uses, would that analysis be still useful for them, or would it direct them in a wrong direction?
I think you can learn from any bit of analysis, but if you're not questioning yourself, then you'll never, again, it's like being perfect at answering questions while looking up an encyclopedia or having a search engine. Does that give you any understanding of the subject? Can you answer that question without access to this resource? It's the same thing in chess. So there's nothing wrong with a bad suggestion of an app any more than there is a problem with a bad encyclopedia. It's just, the only thing is, does it provoke you to ask interesting questions and make interesting connections that then allow you to answer that question in the future, or in the case of chess, allow you to play a game from that point on, or doesn't it? That's all that matters. I mean, in a higher sense, almost all books and engines that we're using today are wrong, because another generation will come along and change the evaluations. So the same analogy can work, but the only thing is, did you improve as a player? That's all.
And on a similar lines, we also have like many puzzle bots that automatically generate some puzzles and give it an exercise to the player. So do you find that to be useful, or do you still
Again,
prefer-
it's a way to cope with the volume of work. I mean, I'll tell you that if I try to look at, and I often try to do this, I'll try to look at the last 40 games from a tournament and try to find some interesting puzzles that I can show to someone. But I will struggle because after a while you'll think, is this moment really interesting? Would they find it challenging? Would they find it easy, and so on? And it takes a lot of effort to find some good ones. With the computer, you can make it look at 1,000 games and say, find me all, mate in ones or mate in twos or where white wins. And, you can set some criteria and it does it very efficiently. Of course, the computer simply applies a rule and you'll get bad results. I've often played Puzzle Rush and so on. And on the third move, I might a rook instead of winning a queen, and it'll tell me that my answer was wrong. And I'm quite annoyed because I think, but I'm a rook up and I'm still winning. But it wanted me to take the queen instead or something like that. So it's a bit rigid, but on the other hand, with the workloads we have no choice. It's the same thing with almost any aspect of being a consumer these days. You're faced with engines, and these engines are sometimes very dumb and frustrating, but we can no longer do the work anymore. So we don't have a choice.
So we can move on to the audience questions now, I guess. But before that, if any of the panelists have any other questions, we can go ahead with them first.
No, you could go with the audience, but I just thought I had one question, which I think Anand did cover. So for example, even in that game with Topalau, when somebody makes these moves very fast, I mean, they, say black thinks for a long time and white is immediately coming with a repartee. The black wonders whether the white is it from his preparation or is he just trying to deceive me, trying to fox me out. These considerations are there in humans which are not there for programs, I think. Like how much does this affect in your own evaluation of, I mean, is that a big problem for humans is it one of the problems amongst several others?
It is definitely a problem. I mean, sometimes people will blunder a piece and the other side will think, because there is this contradiction. If he has checked this in the morning with the computer, then you know that he does not lose a piece. But and you may trust that. You may think, well, he normally checks his work very well, so of course he wouldn't blunder a piece. So, and you might not even notice the problem. And sometimes people still blunder, but it's almost impossible to tell when they're blundering and when they're not. And it's a big problem because even when you play a game, there will come a moment when you'll have to ask yourself, is he bluffing or not? Should I call it or not?
And sometimes we miss these blunders, right? I mean, even in the Carlsen 2014 match with Carlsen, I think game 6, I think Carlsen did blunder, and I think you didn't notice, you were wanting to push the A5 pawn up to A4 pawn to A5 and things like that. I think
but that had nothing to do with computers. That was just oversight because you're not expecting a blunder. But it had nothing to do with computers because we obviously had left preparation long back.
Right. So maybe, Sai, you can take a few from the panel, I mean, from the question answer session.
Yeah, so one of the audience asks about your thoughts on like cheating in chess, like people are using some engines during their online games and so on. So as an extension to that, I also want to ask, like, how effective is the current anti-cheating software?
No one outside the few people who program it knows. In a funny sense, we use computers and then we realize we have no choice but to trust them because, again, unless you're able to do the work yourself, you have to trust the computer. I mean, when you take your phone and you show it on some table and it says this table is 3 meters long or whatever, unless you're able to pull out a tape and check it for yourself, you have to take the computer's verdict for it. And The problem with anti-cheating software is that so we are used to at least thinking that we understand the laws that are being, I mean, we'd still trust a judge to enforce the laws or to pass judgment, but we at least think that the laws make sense at some human level. But with anti-cheating software, you just trust that the programmer made a judgment call, and you trust his judgment on this, and then you say he must have cheated because you can't come up with an alternative explanation. But they're looking at anyway. I think you need a statistical match of 90% of the moves with the computer over many, many games, and then they think you're cheating. Well, my human brain tells me that could somebody learn to cheat slightly better? Could they learn to disagree with the computer on the frivolous stuff, the moves which maybe don't matter that much, and then in the critical moves where only the best move wins? Can that work, and so on? I don't know. In a sense, finally, we will no longer be. The problem is we are at the stage where you don't even understand the answers clearly, and you just have to trust that people are following methods. But they are also trying very hard to follow something that they put an algorithm and it catches. In chess.com, for instance, it catches a couple of thousand cheaters, and it's worrying that many people have found a way to cheat. I mean, I don't know, with playing over a Zoom call, how easy is it to cheat? I mean, people seem to have gotten ahead of this curve. I mean, I always thought if you're playing on your computer and there's a camera in your face, it's very difficult to do something with your hands and get that winning move and look at it and so on. But people seem to manage. So that is worrying.
So now I think some people have some understanding of like how this anti-cheating software might work. Like it detects the match with your moves if it matches with the engine's top move as well. So do you see like people choosing the engine's second move always and cheating in that kind of a way?
Well, that's the trend, but in the end, you would have to say if somebody is spending that much time on cheating, I mean, to be able to efficiently learn to guess the second move of the computer, to follow the second move of the computer and do all that. I mean, in the time you spend doing all that, you might as well actually try and improve your chess a bit. In the end, you trust. The world only works with a little bit of trust. And somehow we all trust that one day a cheater will be caught and you can't cheat forever and you can't break the rules forever. And, you have that trust, because if we don't have that trust, you start questioning everything. We'll all go, we'll go crazy. But just like in life, a lot of people cheat and get away with it totally. Probably it'll start to happen in chess as well.
Adyanta Madhya asks, I thoroughly enjoyed Kasparov's book on AI and chess. I'm curious to know your opinion if you have read it.
It's definitely a reasonable book. I haven't read it, but I've seen a lot of excerpts quoted here and there and so on, but I haven't read the book.
So Manika Sharma asks, like, what is your opinion on what chess is about? Is it about being gifted with an aptitude for chess, or is it about that more you practice, the more you are towards the best?
The more you practice, the better you become. That's clear. And it doesn't even matter if you have a natural inclination for it. I cannot imagine someone being a natural genius and just getting better at chess without playing for at least 7 or 8 years, hundreds, maybe even thousands of games a year. You simply don't get better that way. And no matter how good you are in one or two aspects of chess, there are so many other aspects that will challenge you unless you work on it. So, it's just practice.
So Bharati Ramana asks, people call many of your games immortal, for example, against Aronian in 2013, Corona in 2017, or Karyakin in 2006, etc. But according to you, which is your best immortal game?
I like Lothier in BL 97. That is one of my thing. I like my game with Kramnik in Belgrade in 97. Then, of course, Aronian. Caruana, I think it's an immortal combination, not an immortal game. I mean, it's very nice to make this sliding move queen d4 and win this, but I wouldn't say that it's an immortal game. Karyakin in 2006 was a very nice win. In fact, even my win with Karyakin in Moscow in the candidates in 16, I liked a lot. And like this, you can pick many. Yeah, I don't know if I can shortlist a thing, and I've left out so many. So,
so Bhadwaj Subramaniam asks, do you think the computer games database will completely replace the game collection played by humans for the future generation? And if so, what effect will it have?
not right now, because the way they play is slightly inexplicable for us. I mean, to be honest, when I watch two computers play, it's still like watching two drunk men play. There's a certain randomness because they both are playing like, see, at least if one person is a human, one is a computer, suddenly you understand the way the human plays, and then the computer's moves make a lot more sense. And you think, oh, of course, we are wrong, but when two computers play each other, there is something inexplicable about it. I mean, good luck to someone who's only watching computer games and improving, but also, you must remember that I'm from a different generation. Who knows what future generations will work on? But you can easily imagine that Alpha Zero, Stockfish, Leela, some of these games that are, Fat Fritz, all these games that are being published, that a collection of those games will be very interesting.
Yeah.
But the level is too advanced. So I think till you get into the top 20 in the world, you should still go with the masters, because that is more understandable. To understand these games itself, you need to be so strong that you're reversing the order.
Professor Marmuthu Krishnan is asking, India is able to produce chess grandmasters and world champions after Anand opened the floodgate. We are unable to build the world's best chess engine. Where does India stand in this space?
I think we are not producing the world's best engine because we're not trying. I don't believe that producing a chess engine is some very high-end work. It is intelligent work, and you can come up with better things. But I think the reason there are only 3 or 4 really good chess engines is because that's what there's a market for. If there was an infinite market for chess engines, then yes, everyone will pile in, and everyone will be developing chess engines, and you'll get some very, very good ones. So I think simply no one is trying to do it.
So Abhiram asks about your game against Ilyas Mirin in 1994, where you thought for about 1 minute 43 seconds for a match. What's going on in your brain at the time?
Simply that for a moment I drew a blank, and then I was slightly confused as to what I should do in that game. To cut a long story short, he had switched the move order, and I couldn't remember whether I'm supposed to play d6 or d5, and then I drew a blank, and I sat there and I tried to recollect, and it was more my state of mind rather than the position. And then a few minutes later, I realized, oh wait, if knight f7, I have queen e7, and then I started playing very fast to catch up on time, and there was no problem. In fact, I finished with more time than him. So
Aditya asked, like, with the boom in online chess now, do you think the over-the-board chess is on the way out?
the boom in online chess makes me desperate to see some over-the-board chess. So hopefully they will support each other. That people who see one will want to see the other.
So, Have you seen this latest game of Carlsen versus Hikaru, where they play King E2, King E7? What do you think about that?
Well, one of chess's dirty secrets is the short draw, and this was just a funny short draw instead of the normal boring one. I mean, already before this Carlsen Nakamura, there were so many people playing this Berlin defense with the Queen D4, E4, D4, E4 draw.
Yeah.
And there have been other draws like this that people just play because they're bored or they've already qualified or something. And for me, it's not a big deal.
So your next on the board tournament is No Castling Masters?
No, I'm hoping to play in a Grand Chess Tour event before that, a rapid event, and then the No Castling Masters. But yes, and both will be in Europe. So I'm obviously hoping that travel resumes by that point.
You're playing against, I think, Kramnik in the No Castling Masters.
Correct.
He's, I think, one of the players who proposed or advocated strongly for this variant, and he's practicing a lot with Alpha Zero, I believe. So how are your preparations going?
Well, essentially, I'm going to switch on a chess engine and watch and slowly try out various moves and see how it happens. For those of you who, I mean, from the question so far, I think the audience is very interested in chess. But my original plan was to play E4, E5, King E2, King E7, King E1, King E8. So the bonk cloud. This is the Carlsen Nakamura, except they did it 3 times. And then to switch on an engine, because then it's no castling chess. But Kramnik pointed out, he said, well, this is actually no castling chess, but E4, committed. So his suggestion was play knight f3, rook g1 on both sides, and both sides with black. And then you get back to the starting position. And then you can try every move. And basically a pre-existing an engine which is already in existence now, will be able to show you ideas and then try to make sense of its verdict. Well, that's what I'm going to do. I'm probably going to start doing it in May or something, because now it feels like too early. But it should be fun. Let's see how it is.
So Shreya Shankar asked that one thing you hear about AI chess engines is that they don't play beautiful creative game and win from sheer processing powers. Any recommendations how you can make them more creative?
Actually, AI engines play some of the most amazingly beautiful ideas and combinations. And many of them have revolutionized our understanding of chess in the last few years. So that is not true. However, you're almost certainly right that AI engines don't play that in a creative way. They or in any way that we would understand. They're following something else. But at the same time, I don't know how my brain works. I don't know how its brain works. I'm running out of explanations. But to a human eyes, the games they produce are very, very beautiful.
Perfect. I think we are over the time now. Thank you so much for your detailed perspectives and thoughts on AI and chess. Any of the panelists want to jump in?
Thank you very much.
Yeah, I have a question for sure. Like, I'm rather concerned, I would say, like after you, we don't have someone possibly like, I mean, like, of course, Hari Krishna is there and Vidit Gujarati, but somebody who can constantly be, you know, like maybe the Chinese have got a lot like Ding Liren and folks like that who are constantly in top 10 and winning the top tournaments. That doesn't seem to be happening, though we have a lot of grandmasters. It's a personal concern I have. I mean, I'm just expressing what's your thought on that?
Yes, well, Hari is not doing too badly. He's still top 25 at least, maybe top 20. And but
it's like
one of the things I started recently was, you know, I've got an academy with Westbridge, so it's called the Westbridge Anand Academy, and we have selected 6 youngsters right now, and plus some others that I'm working with, and we're trying to support them, and these are all play in youngsters who are, with the exception of Vaishali, who's 19, the others are all 17 and under. So we're trying to work with them at an early stage and see if we can build up another a few top 10 players and maybe possibly a world champion. So we'll see.
So, I mean, anyone from like, say, Pragyananda, or are they there in part of this program, or they're not?
Yes, well, the names you should be able to guess quite easily. It's Nihal Sarin, Pragyananda, Gukesh, Raunak Sadhwani, Mendonca, and Vaishali. And besides that, I'm interacting with some of the others, Arjun, Divya, Vantika. So many of them are on the team in the Olympiad and so on. And they're all very promising youngsters. And hopefully, if we're able to support their training and support them in some way, then it will go forward. But basically, I launched the Westbridge Academy in December, and we've been running since January. So it's already operational 3 months now.
Sure.
Can I ask you a question? If chess players, top chess players are now training with the computers, as I understand, are there less space for mind games ahead of the tournament, ahead of each game, and what used to be the intrigue and the mind games that we used to read about? I mean, I'm not a big expert, but I'm just asking a question. Is that true, or is it not true?
There isn't really a connection. I mean, people were always training at home, and that is one kind of chess work. And then the mind games and intrigue happen anyway. The only difference is earlier, you could doubt yourself, because if all the work had been done by other humans, there was still a possibility of error. But now you know that if you took your best engine, and this is commonly available, and if you checked it this morning, then you know that you should be able to trust your own judgment, and you don't need to. And so in that narrow area, if you have done the work and you've revised it, then the computer gives you a guarantee of some guarantee. It tells you that this position works, you can play it confidently. That's maybe the only aspect where the mind games no longer apply, but they do.
Okay, thank you.
So we can possibly have a couple of minutes still. I mean, anyone else from the audience or from the panelists, anyone wants to throw in a few questions, or at least a question? So I was having one, but I'm not sure if this is really a right question to ask. But like, let's say, like, from the days of old, like Newton or even Einstein and Niels Bohr, Schrodinger, Max Planck, I think they weren't supported by computing, but I think they came up with very fundamental discoveries and things like that without computing tools to aid them. So I was asking Sai Krishna this when we were iterating. So when we become very dependent on computing and understanding of chess, are we losing some fundamental aspects which we may otherwise bring to the table in chess itself? Or I don't know if that makes sense, or this question.
My feeling is, at every stage, we have used technology to change our work, reduce our workload, or to change our working methods. And even if you have a lot of advanced computer data, extracting a conclusion is still for us. But I think some of our skills have evolved. There are things that I used to do when I'm young that I feel even slightly helpless now, because I'm used to checking it with the computer. And but once upon a time, we used to navigate the Earth by looking at stars, and now people are totally dependent on the GPS. Probably we cannot navigate anymore with stars. Have we lost something? Probably yes, but anyway, with our light pollution, we can't see the stars anyway. But I think we are adapting, but there is still amazing new stuff to be found. I feel that for every door the computer shut, it also opens a new door for us. And for the moment, I'm okay with that. I try not to sit and be too nostalgic. I don't see how I can stop this process, so we might as well just get on board.
Sure. Yeah, I think maybe it's an amazing talk, an enlightening talk with Anand, and very well moderated by Sai Krishna. I think I hope everyone enjoyed. And maybe we would now move on to the next panelist. I request Anand to stay on if possible. I mean, that's just a request from our side. But so maybe Ravi, you could introduce Devi.
Sir, I need to change the live.
Pardon?
I need to change the live in a minute.
You need to, okay.